Hello friends, welcome to The Recap, the show where we go through some of the major talking points that surrounded the most recent round of Premier League fixtures. Today, we are going to be talking all kinds of football. Leeds United taking on Wolverhampton Wanderers. We have Chelsea dropping points with Everton. They drew 2-2. But are Graham Potter's men close to something brilliant? And we have an Arsenal side who refuse to let up steam. They are continuing to make their charge towards the Premier League title, and now they only have 10 games left. Join me as we go through all of those talking points. Please make sure you like the video and subscribe, it really would mean a lot to me. But now, let's talk football. What a game this was. The game ended Wolves 2, Leeds 4, and Leeds looked dangerous with nearly every single attack. However, I can't help but think that's because it was a Wolves side that really failed to defend any kind of pressure that Leeds brought forward. If we have a look at the attacking momentum bar, it was an amazing game because it was so end-to-end, but Wolves dominated the attacking momentum for the most part in both halves. But it was Leeds that found the greater clear-cut opportunities. And although Wolves did a good job with the selection, I thought that picking João Gomez in this midfield was quite a brave choice. Leaving out Mateus Nunes and really picking one of their young players, I thought he did okay. It was culpable for the second goal that Wolves conceded, but apart from that, I thought he had a general all-round good game. But if we have a look at the actual team selection and their average positions, I actually think Lopetegui's got something going here. If we have a look at it, you can very clearly pinpoint the 4 at the back, the 3 in midfield, and the 3 strikers. And you can also see the way they start to play. Pedro Neto being isolated against Leeds' fullback in Firpo. Podence being isolated against Ayling as well, being able to drift inside or drift out. And then you have the likes of Raul Jimenez dropping deep just to pick up the ball and trying to help with the transition into the 2 forward wide players, then getting into the box later on. You can also see Ruben Neves being able to play those crossfield passes over to the wing and vice versa with João Gomez. Overlaps from the likes of Johnny and Semedo help to isolate and create overloads on fullback positions. It's generally a very good play, and attacking wise, I've actually been pretty impressed with the way Wolves have gone forward. I think they were unlucky with the penalty that they weren't given, and they were also unfortunate with some certain saves that Meslier had. That being said, defensively they are shocking, and I do mean shocking. Nelson Semedo and Johnny, in my opinion, should not be playing for Wolves again, and I just don't think they have the quality required to be in the Premier League. That sounds very, very harsh, but when you're not winning a single ground duel, and it's the only way that Leeds are finding their way forwards, it gets a bit ridiculous. And on Johnny's side, apart from the sending off, which was a horrendous challenge, he also only won 3 of his 10 ground duels. It's just not good enough and frankly quite ridiculous. He was failing to win his duel for the Christensen third goal, and he just gets out-muscled, he gets out-fought, he doesn't have the desire, he doesn't have the determination, and to be quite honest, I don't know what he's blocking. I don't know why he doesn't just clear the ball. It was absolute madness in my opinion. Jose Sarr fails to make a single save. All of Leeds' 4 shots go in the net. You might say some of them are a little bit unfortunate, especially the second goal and perhaps the first. But for the third goal, he gets nutmegged. It's not good enough. And while Lopetegui has done a good job of maintaining this midfield pressure and starting to get some attacks going, I actually thought Wolves looked very dangerous going forwards, especially in the second half, once they started to utilise certain positions. But defensively, they're just being let down by 2 players, particularly who I just don't think are good enough. From a Leeds perspective, I thought they were very, very good. They understood where they needed to go. Gnonto gave Semedo an absolute nightmare of a game. Jack Harrison cutting inside to mix with Brendan Aronson, who made some good forward runs. I thought Patrick Bamford actually made some very, very clever movements in the first half in particular, and I didn't think that he was found all too much. Weston McKennie and Mark Roca really did do a good job of maintaining that midfield presence. They were outgunned in certain instances by Ruben Neves and João Gomez, as well as Lamina, but they didn't need to have too much of an attacking presence because that was being done mainly by Gnonto and Jack Harrison. Luke Ayling obviously gets the goal, and while I do think him and Junior Firpo had okay games, they were exposed at certain times, and it needed good saves from Meslier to really make sure that Leeds kept the points. If we have a look at the statistics, I think that, yeah, it's just madness. The amount of goals that Wolves conceded in comparison to what they should have scored for Leeds and for Wolves is just a little bit crazy. 2.86 XG compared to 1.47, and that's credit to Leeds because they're being clinical. They're getting good shots into important areas. That being said, they only had 4 shots and all 4 of those goals went in. Is that more of credit to Leeds, or is it more of a knock against the likes of Jose Sarr? I'm not too sure, but Wolves dominated nearly every other statistic in the game. 66% possession as well. They played quite well, and it's quite alarming the fact that they've lost the game 4-2, obviously trying to overcommit players forward in those latter stages, and that's where the last goal comes from. We can see that they actually had 54 duels, 16 aerial duels, beating out Leeds as well, fighting a little bit harder and winning those duels, but it was Leeds that came out on top, and it was down to some very poor Wolves play, some good Leeds attacking play, and to be honest with you, it made for a cracking game. A great one to go and watch the highlights for if you haven't already. Stick with this video though, still we have more things to come, but it was a fantastic game, and Leeds ended up being the better. Wolves need to have a look at their back line, it's just not good enough. The game ended 4-2 to Leeds. Up next we have Chelsea against Everton. The game ended 2-2, and I've been seeing a lot of disappointment and anger almost towards Chelsea and Graham Potter in the way that they set up, the way that they played the game out towards the end, and the way that Everton got their last minute equaliser. And to be honest with you, I've got a couple of things to say about that, because I don't think that's giving Everton anywhere near the credit that they deserve. I think they came with a game plan, and I think they came with a way to disrupt Chelsea, and for the most part it seemed like they were doing quite a good job at it, even though Chelsea ended up being 2-1 up. I thought Everton defensively were actually very, very good, and you can see Chelsea dominated pretty much all of the game, and it was only in spits and spurts where Everton were really able to get forwards and actually create some momentum, and that was down to both the way Chelsea played, which is very good, which Chelsea weren't given credit for, and it's also part of the way that Everton wanted to play. They wanted Chelsea to have the ball, they wanted to be resolute. Sean Dyche likes his team to be able to be defensively sound, and that's what they were for the most part, and it ended up being quite a decent game actually. If we have a look at the lineups, I think that people are being far too harsh on Chelsea and actually not giving Everton enough credit. If we have a look at Chelsea, you can see they're lined up normally. This is how you'd expect them to be. Fofana, Koulibaly, Badiashile, normal. Reece James and Ben Chilwell, both on the flanks, normal. Enzo Fernandez and Kovacic, who are the 2 main central midfielders now for me. And you have the front 3 of Havertz, Felix and Pulisic. Now, this is all fine, and if you actually have a look at their average positions, they are unbelievable. These are just sensational. Look how balanced they are. Look how well spaced out they are. You have Kovacic and Enzo Fernandez here. You have Reece James and Ben Chilwell up on the flank supporting the attack. You have that front 5 here. You have this back 5 here. And it's worked out to such a treat. The positions are just fantastic. It is actually a dream for certain coaches to try and get this kind of positioning into their team. And it is just unbelievably brilliant. Mark my words, Chelsea, before too long, will absolutely smash a team, because they've got all of the building blocks to create a well-rounded, a disciplined, and a very, very organised attack. And once they up the pace of the game, once they're able to get passes through into players quicker, and they're able to up the tempo of their matches a lot faster, then they will absolutely blow certain teams away. Mark my words, Chelsea are going to be a serious threat. They just need to be given that little bit more time. Graham Potter needs that little bit more time on the training pitch to try and instill a little bit more pace into them. But at the same time, I don't think Everton were given anywhere near enough credit for this game, especially from the Chelsea contingent who were looking at their own side. I think Everton did a very good job of stopping Chelsea in the way that they wanted to. Onana and Doucouré were very good destructive midfielders. Idrissa Gana Gueye really shuffled across whenever he needed to, and they actually understood where Chelsea were meant to be playing and where they wanted to put the ball down most of the time. And we can see that in their average positions in just a moment. But I was very impressed with the way they were able to go forwards. Obviously, with their height, with their physical presence, they were a major danger for Chelsea in terms of set pieces. And if we actually have a look at defensively, the way Everton set up, you can see that they drifted over to this right-hand side, Chelsea's left-hand side, because that's where they were getting most of their joy. You can see Idrissa Gana Gueye, you can see Doucouré, and you can see the likes of McNeil, and they just played so well. Iwobi on this right hand side as well, and Onana, it just did very, very well. Idrissa obviously coming over to assist, to help with the likes of Chilwell, who was cutting inside. Then you have Godfrey, who was actually the left back in this situation, coming inside to try and help out. That's because of the overloads that are happening, allowing the likes of McNeil to really drop back. They became compact, they became difficult to beat, and I don't think they were given anywhere near enough credit. That being said, I'm sure it should be expected that Chelsea should have won the game, and by the statistics, you'd say that was correct as well. If you see the 2.37 XG, you'd say that's normal. 1.27 for Everton. All of the stats generally were in favour of Chelsea, apart from some important ones that we're going to see down in a second. 3 big chances for Everton. They didn't exactly make the most of those chances. Obviously, one of them was missed, and Chelsea didn't really have any big chances, which is actually credit to the way that they were clinical about it. Yes, they got a penalty, but they deserved that penalty. Their pressure that they had on the pitch was very, very good. And even down to commitment, you can't say the players weren't committed to the effort, because they had most of their duels won, they had most of their aerial duels won, outperforming Everton by quite a margin, you can see here. So I don't think there's enough to really go into Chelsea here. It's just an unfortunate result. I thought Everton played very, very well, and Chelsea sometimes need to give the credit to Everton. Chelsea will be a force in time. The positions make so much sense. They're getting better and better game by game. They're slowly starting to understand how they should be playing and how they should be playing with each other. It's only going to take time, and time in the international break is going to be that bit more valuable as well. As for Everton, a very, very valuable point which they'll be able to take with them. I think they deserved something out of the game due to their defensive resilience. Overall, the points were shared, and I think it was a fair result. Chelsea need to calm down. Everton did a great job, and they need to be given more credit. Last but certainly not least, we have Arsenal up against Crystal Palace. We have Arsenal winning the game by 4-1, 2-0 at half-time, and a lot was going to be made of how Arsenal were going to respond after their exit in the Europa League. Naturally, as you can see, they responded with quite a turnaround. They did a fantastic job of really quietening the critics, and they just went about their own business. You can see they dominated the first half in terms of attacking momentum, and then later on in the game they really just started to level the game out somewhat. Crystal Palace had a couple more chances, they committed more bodies forward, but the game was done at that point, if I'm completely honest with you. We can have a look at the lineups, and what more can you say about the way this Arsenal team play? Bukayo Saka is sensational. He's the first Premier League player to get double figures in both assists and goals. Gabriel Martinelli is an absolute force to be reckoned with his pace down the Arsenal left-hand side, and Leandro Trossard dropping into these pockets of space to help both of them. Martin Odegaard floating across the entirety of this midfield, making sure that he's able to pick up the ball whenever one of his teammates either need to make a pass or whenever he needs to offload the ball. He is the ticking clock in this Arsenal team, and he's the reason why they are so fluid. He's the reason why they're able to really convert their plays from defence to attack. He's the reason why they're so fluid and mobile going forwards. He's the reason why Bukayo Saka is able to cut inside, the reason why Gabriel Martinelli is able to make those busting runs, and why Granit Xhaka is able to support. Odegaard makes everything tick, and it's just fantastic to see this happen. If we have a look at the average positions, you'll see the kind of role that Thomas Partey is playing along with Alexander Zinchenko as well. When Arsenal go forwards, yes, you have Ben White on this side, that's Holding, and that's Gabriel. But what ends up happening is that Zinchenko cuts inside into the middle of the pitch. Thomas Partey moves over to the right-hand side, and this gives Arsenal almost a double pivot in midfield. This allows them to cover so much more space from the midfield, and obviously they have an extra player in that middle of the park, allowing them to be both defensively solid in the middle, where most of the counter-attacks will come down, and also at the same time they're able to recover possession and recycle it round. This allows Odegaard and Xhaka to almost have free roles to be able to move around the forward areas of the midfield as they please. And then you have Trossard drifting wherever he wants. Saka and Martinelli keep their width, making sure that they're able to go down either flank, and then you're keeping your width, but at the same time you're overloading the midfield. This allows Arsenal to really have a lot of presence all over the pitch, and it almost feels like they are suffocating the opponent. And in due time, I do think that teams are going to look to really thwart Zinchenko, to really nullify that position, because I think once you do that, you turn Arsenal back into a standard team. Teams aren't looking at Zinchenko at the moment. They're not looking for a way to pressurise him, and I think that's going to be the way that Arsenal are really going to be thwarted later on down the line. Perhaps next season, once teams have had the time to really evaluate the way that they could stop this incredible Arsenal side. But for the moment, this is working fantastically, and it could very well win them the league. If we have a look at Crystal Palace though, I was quite impressed with the way they set up. Yes, they don't have a manager at the moment. Yes, Patrick Vieira isn't there. However, they did set up with something of a game plan. I think they looked to really isolate and try to nullify the Partey and Zinchenko partnership, but they just weren't able to do it with one man. Jeffrey Schlupp, yes, while he was very good with his pressing, it really did diminish later on into the first half, and then with Arsenal's tempo just ramping up or even maintaining the same level, Crystal Palace just couldn't deal with it, and slowly but surely you saw Milivojevic and Doucouré just struggle to get with the Arsenal runners. Odegaard was making them run riot, and it was just a little bit too much for these Palace players. If we have a look at their attacking positions, or average positions I should say, you can see Doucouré and Milivojevic just push back that little bit more. Schlupp pushing forwards to try and nullify that Partey position that we spoke about, along with Zinchenko, and there became just a little bit of a gap in between the midfield where the press just didn't quite work. Zaha and Elise really trying to go forwards and pressurise again, but they just didn't have the legs behind them to be able to back up that level of press. And in the end, it just became a little bit too much for Crystal Palace to handle, and Arsenal were just too good. I feel quite sorry for Joe Whitworth, who was a player. Obviously, he's very young coming in, and he lets in 4 goals, and perhaps he could do a little bit better with a couple of them, but I don't think he was given a lot of help, and Arsenal really did carve Palace open on certain occasions. One other thing, this might sound harsh, I was quite disappointed with the way that Elise really tried to drag the ball forwards. When you have players like this, and they're almost flair players, luxury players, and you're playing a team like Arsenal and you're aware of their threat and you're looking to nullify them, especially when you're playing away from home in Crystal Palace's sense, I'd like the wingers to really do a little bit more effort tracking back to try and help out their fullbacks, because they really were given the runaround for a lot of this game due to Saka and Martinelli really driving at them, and they just weren't given the help that I think they really needed. Elise, don't get me wrong, did a very good job towards the start of the first half. However, later on into the second half and later on in the first half, he just stopped making those backtracking runs, and it really did hurt Milivojevic and Joel Ward, and the same happened for Zaha out on this side. I'm not really looking to be too critical, because I know that Crystal Palace aren't looking to be beating Arsenal or really taking the game to them, but I thought that there were a couple of really standard moments that Crystal Palace could have done a little bit better, just some basics that I think they started to lack later on in the game. Elise is a very good player, and at 21 years of age, I don't want to be too critical of him. That being said, he's in this side, and when he's good at driving with the ball, he's very good, but he also wasn't very good with the ball today, and I just don't think that he really offered enough, both going forwards and defensively, and that was pretty much the same for Wilf Zaha. It was a game of maybes. Along with Edouard, they weren't really able to get anything going, and while they did have a couple of chances, they were squandered, which makes the scoreline seem that little bit more rough. Statistics wise, we can see that Arsenal pretty much dominated a lot of the game. I think you'd see their 1.57 xg, you can't see that here, but you'd see their 1.57 xg and see that they scored 4 goals. I think that's quite harsh in Crystal Palace, and I think you'd be pretty much sound about that. Crystal Palace scoring 1 goal only out of their 0.78 xg. 60% possession is quite a lot. Obviously Arsenal were at home, but Palace really struggled, as I said, with trying to stop the Arsenal tempo going forwards. 15 shots, only 5 on target. They'll look to be a little bit more clinical later on, but it really, like I said, was just a little bit too much for Palace to really go for. Arsenal winning their duels, being committed in the challenge, being committed aerially, and they just had too much for Palace to handle today. So a fantastic bounce back from Arsenal after their defeat in the Europa League. Now they have one thing to focus on, and that is the Premier League, and they have come back with a vengeance. The game ended Arsenal 4, Crystal Palace 1, and there doesn't look any stopping, or it doesn't look like there's going to be any stopping to Arsenal anytime soon. And finally, to end, let's have a look at a couple of the games that we didn't cover in detail, and then finally look at the Premier League table. Newcastle United beating Nottingham Forest by 2-1. Alexander Isak with the 2 goals, getting a late penalty to send Newcastle closer to those Champions League places. Aston Villa beating Bournemouth 3-0. Bournemouth staying close to the bottom of the table while Unai Emery's men march on. We can see that Brentford and Leicester drew 1-1. A good point for Leicester, all things considered. And you have the man, or the name, that is on everyone's lips, and that is Antonio Conte. It just is madness what he has done. In his post-match press conference, he actually has a little bit of a meltdown. He criticises the club, he criticises the heritage of the club, he criticises the players after their capitulation, being 3-1 up with 15 minutes to go. James Ward-Prowse with a late minute penalty, 92nd minute penalty to allow that 3-3. It really is just remarkable, and if you haven't seen Antonio Conte's press conference, it is something to go and check out because it is absolutely crazy. Finally, let's have a look at the Premier League table, and as you can see, Southampton stay in bottom even though they got that all-important point against Tottenham, but West Ham and Bournemouth continue that bottom 3 trend. West Ham obviously haven't played. Leicester, Forest and Everton after that vital point, bringing them that little bit further away from the table. Leeds beating Wolves to drag them back into this relegation battle, and you have Crystal Palace, managerless Crystal Palace, after sacking Patrick Vieira and their 4-1 loss to Arsenal. Moving further up the table, we can see that Aston Villa are absolutely fine. They are safe. How far can they go up the table now? They are level on points and games played with Chelsea, who are really struggling. Graham Potter, as I've said, needs to be given time, but the results are not going their way all of the time. We thought they'd turn a corner, and they've just taken one step back, which is absolutely fine. It's going to happen. That being said, a club like Chelsea will not be accepting this kind of form for too long, but they do need to persevere. I do believe that Graham Potter is the right man. Stick with him. Fulham obviously haven't played because of their FA Cup tie. Brentford ended up with a draw. Brighton are FA Cup tied, as are Liverpool. Moving forward, so that means that nothing changes in the table. We can see that Newcastle getting an extra 3 points, and now they're on 47 points after 26 games played. They have 2 games on Tottenham, and they are only 2 points behind. That 4th spot looks very much up for grabs. Manchester United are in 3rd, having only played 26 games with 50 points. Can they pick up the points that they need to cement their place in this top 4? Time will tell. Will the amount of games that Manchester United are having to play really hurt them later on down the line? Will the squad be able to cope with it? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on that particular topic. And finally, we have the top 2. Arsenal's victory and Man City's being cup tied in the FA Cup, meaning they're not being able to play in the Premier League this weekend, means that Arsenal now go 8 points clear at the top of the table, having played one more match. International break means that Mikel Arteta's men end up plus 8 points with only 10 games to play for the Gunners. 10 finals for Arsenal to play, and they will become Premier League champions. My big question to you, though, will it happen? That's it for today, guys. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave the video with a like and subscribe if you haven't for more content like this coming very soon. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well. You don't want to miss what's coming up in the near future. And let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on everything we've talked about and your team in general. Tell me who is your team and how you think they've done this weekend. I would love to hear from you, so please do reach out and let me know. But like I said, that's it from me for today, so thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care of yourselves, and bye-bye.